I'm Andrew Kappel, the host of the Leader Leverage podcast. On this show, we'll talk to revenue leaders, company executives, and entrepreneurs to hear how they unlock go-to-market leverage. Let's get started. All right, welcome to an episode of the Leader Leverage podcast, where we talk to sales and go-to-market leaders to hear how they unlock go-to-market leverage. Today, I'm joined by Brandon Taylor. We have some fun tie-ins with Brandon. Need to give a shout out to Paul Gillette. And I actually had gotten together with Paul at a family friend wedding some time ago. And Paul said, hey, you need to get in touch with Brandon. This was, some time ago. It was a couple of rolls ago, but we weren't able to talk at the time. However, Brandon and I were able to meet at the SaaStock conference recently in Austin, Texas, and we had a good conversation there. We've kept in touch, and now we have Brandon on the podcast, so very excited.
So shout out to Paul Gillette.
Yep, he helped to make it happen. So Brandon, why don't you, as a way of getting started, why don't you talk about how you got into leadership?
Okay, so it's an interesting story. So a crazy story around sales is that, when I was in college, I got recruited to sell books door to door. So I sold books door to door over a summer, won top 5% in the nation. And it was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, right? Like I wanted to quit every day, but the metrics were there. You go out, you present 20 times, you knock on this amount of doors, the ratios are the ratios. And then from there, I ended up managing a small team of people that were doing this. Now, this was a while back. But when I really got into management was when I worked at Dell. I started at Dell and big corporate. I came in and I only worked probably maybe 6 months. I sold, was wildly successful. And the norm is, oh, you're wildly successful, then you'd be a great manager, which is not true, but that's what happened. But during that time, I had a really good manager and I had a really bad manager. And what I knew and what I learned during that moment is what I like and what I didn't like and what was good and what wasn't good. And, I didn't get management training or leadership training. So I had to figure out how I was going to make it my own. So I took both of those experiences, wrapped them up in this nice present. And then when I had the opportunity to go into management, they allowed me to coach first. So I went and coached, trained, and enabled sellers. And then I had an opportunity to get my own team. And that team, out of a team of 50 people, 50 teams, it was probably the third from the bottom. So I was okay. I was excited because I just had an opportunity to be in management. I was in leadership. And then from there, wow, I can tell you many stories, but we ended up, winning the Global Presidents Club overall. But a lot of great things happened.
That is a great feedback loop, a great story. Imagine if you went on to be CRO of that book selling operation, who knows, you might not be here today.
That's very true. That is very true.
Good story, good background. And Brandon, I'm curious, this is the Leader Leverage podcast. Using all of your experience, what managerial style works, what doesn't work. When you're working with an existing place where you're at, or you're evaluating a new company, how do you get leverage? How do you plan out your first 90 days and figure out what you're going to do and where you're going to focus?
So that's a great question. Stepping into an organization where you don't know much about it, you have to learn quickly. Now there are a couple of different books on the first 90 days and how important they are, and what you do in the first 30, 60, and 90, and so on. But I think within the first, you really, if depending on the size of the organization, you really, and then, there are some organizations you step into, and if it's it's a Mayday, and you got to turn it around fast, that's different. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is an organization that you want to go scale, double-digit growth. You typically wouldn't make any changes at all for 60 to 90 days. Larger the organization, it's going to be 90 days. Smaller the organization, maybe it's 60, because your goal is to step in there and learn. It's about the products, about the industries, around the go-to-market motion. It's around the people that are currently working, because many times they've done a great job up until then. They've already grown the company and, gotten it to, you know, 25 or 30 million. So they've done some great things. But what I've learned is many times the people that got it to 25 aren't the people that take it to 75. And some of them are, but not all of them. So from a leverage perspective, that first 30 days is 100% around just learning. And everything I'd mentioned on the learning track is about the industry, the people, the product, where it fits in. But most importantly, when you dig into the systems and processes that are in place, you know, what's working, what's not working. Leverage my background and my skill to say, I see in the first 30 days, my assessment is a very strong summary of, first of all, from a people perspective, you know, we have 14 people on the team. It looks to me, based on my assessment of the performance metrics and their lack of management and what the future looks like in current pipeline, that 6 of them may not make it. So I'm looking at the people first. And you'll hear me say this on, you know, all the time, people, processes, and systems, right? But the people come first. You got to understand what you have, because if you don't get the people right, the people part of it, the other things don't matter. It doesn't matter. You could have the best processes in the world, the best systems or technology. It doesn't even matter. But if you've got the right people, you know, you can make things happen without some of those things many times.
Absolutely. And so, Brandon, you're doing your evaluation in the first 30 days, and then you start to get an idea of what's working, what's not. How many things do you look at? How do you make sense of the many facets of people, process, and systems? How do you evaluate that? How do you simplify it and then present it back to the folks that you're working with?
So I've got a very prescriptive system. I evaluate 12 growth drivers. They're specific to go to market, all of them. Very specific to go to market. I will evaluate 12 growth drivers. I'll high grade the top 5 that make the most immediate impact to revenue. Because let's face it, you're in a growth leader role. They really believe you're a miracle worker most of the time, and they need you to turn it around fast. So at the end of the day, you know, I evaluate 12 growth drivers. I high grade the top 5 in order of, you know, revenue impact. And then I'm prepared, and I will work on, depending on the workload on each one of them, typically 3 or 4 of them. And I have one as a backup in case there's a fast pivot, you know, like there's a fast pivot. Oh, here's a great opportunity to go drive revenue. Let's pivot to this. So I have a backup most of the time.
Okay, so it's a stack ranked list, and you have your top 3 or 4, and then you're ready to go. Things are always going to be changing. It's the only constant.
That's right. That is true. Very
okay.
True.
Biggest leadership loss or lesson?
Biggest leadership loss or lesson? I stepped into an organization recently, and it's really interesting that, you know, same system. I think revenue growth is prescriptive. I come in and evaluate 12 growth drivers. This company they had high graded the team 2 years in a row. They had started out with this really large team, and they went through the process of keeping the best of the best in year 1. And then they kept the best of the best in year 2. So when I got in, I'm like, well, they've got the best of the best. So I made the assumption that the people that were in place were the best of the last 2 years. So I didn't make it a priority. And I went for 4 months, evaluated my 12 growth drivers. I high graded the top 5. I landed on 4. I executed against those 4. But within 4, maybe 5 months, I realized that 50% of the team, they weren't the right fit to take it into the future, which is a challenge, right? So at the end of the day, I looked at it. I'm like, I began in that moment doing passive recruiting. I believe in recruiting people that are completely happy where they are. They have no reason to go anywhere. And I'm like, well, I'm going to reach out to them, connect with them, you know, familiarize. I want them to know who I am. And then there will be a time in their future where they're not happy. And that's going to be the time when I say, boom, you know, let's bring you over. So I was looking for people that had relevant industry SaaS experience so I could decrease the ramp time from 9 months down to 3. And that's a big number. You can do it with the right people, give them swim lanes and the right enablement materials, and then create the metrics to manage, measure, and track and make it happen. And that's the path I went on. So the lesson learned is if you have a system, go in with the system, make no assumptions that the people in the place, the people or the processes are right based on what's happened in the past. I let that get by me. So that was a lesson learned. I made a mistake and I didn't do that. You go leadership, then sellers, and then marketers, and then go to market and client success. And you do the assessment, and you do it from the beginning to the end.
It all comes down to people.
I believe it.
Absolutely. Well, Brandon, now we're at the rapid fire segment of the Leader Leverage podcast. So we're going to go through a couple of quick hitter questions, quick response, and then we'll wrap it up.
Sounds great. Rapid fire. Let's go.
All right. What is more valuable to you, process or tools?
Process.
Okay, process. What do you do for fun? Hobbies?
I hike. Just recently, I went barefoot skiing. I got a very strong video of it. It's a little bit extreme, but imagine 40 miles per hour on your feet. That's exactly what we did. It's something I did for a long time, and it had been 18 years since I've been out there. So I went back out there, and there were 3 of us, and we went out there and barefoot skied. But hiking, skiing, traveling, snow skiing, and water skiing.
Cool. So you're a Texas guy. Where do you go hiking in Texas?
Wow. I don't know if you've you know about the app All Trails.
All Trails. Okay.
From where I'm at right now, and I'm just in a normal city in Austin, Texas, I can go and find 10 hikes within 7 miles in a second. They're great. Wonderful. On water, in the forest, with some hills. Now, my favorite spot to hike is in Colorado and New Mexico and the Pacific Northwest. I'll go there, have an opportunity to go and travel and stay there and work and hike during the evenings. It's fantastic.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, Brandon, favorite thing in your home office?
Favorite thing in my home office? I would say my windows, because I believe the windows bring in natural light, and the natural light fundamentally changes everything. And you can see there's some light coming in here.
There we go.
Right? But it's not those windows. It's the ones that are in front of me.
Yeah.
You can look at when it gets dark and you can see your face and it just doesn't look the same. But that natural light brings out some sunshine and happiness.
I love it. I love it. I look out my back window of my condo here in Rhode Island, and I'm on the Northeast corridor for Amtrak. So about 10 or 12 times an hour, the trains go by the Acela Express between Boston and New York. And so about 7 minutes from my condo, I can get to a train station to pick it up. So I'm a train guy.
Fantastic.
All right. Who inspires you?
My kids. My kids are 10 and 12, 2 boys. One is very social, and the other one is very methodical. He can sit for 4 hours and put together the best, Lego set, concoction of something all day long. So I've got 2 kids that just love me like crazy. I love them like crazy. And I say they inspire me in a big way.
If I had to guess, it sounds like they're a combination of you.
I always say they look more like their mom.
Okay.
They are handsome little boys. They've got wonderful olive skin. But yeah, there's one I'd say there's probably a combination.
Because you're methodical and also, outgoing, social. I think you have to have both of those skill sets.
Yeah. That's a fair assessment.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up there. The last question is, Brandon, anyone else who you would want to hear on the Rapid Fire Leader Leverage podcast?
Sam Jacobs with Pavilion, probably be a good person,
Yep.
I would say. And a guy I know very well named Alan Mayer. He leads the way here in Austin, Texas, another great human. I would say probably BJ, be a good person.
Oh, yeah.
Leverage. BJ would be a good human as well. And man, if you give me a little time, I've got a list of 10 or 15 of them, because there are some great people to hear from. Really great people. Bring Scott Leese on. Bring some of his counterparts. Kevin Dorsey. You know these guys here in Austin.
Yep. Austin is a big hub, so we'll have to shout out the Pavilion Go-to-Market Conference. I think it's coming up in October. Brandon will be there. Sam Jacobs will be there. I'm sure BJ will be there, so it's going to be a great time.
Yeah, there's going to be a big crowd there. I'm on a thread where everyone's talking about they're going to be here, and it's a really large group, really exciting group.
Great. Well, thanks, Brandon, for coming on. If anyone wanted to reach out or get in touch with you, where would we send them?
LinkedIn, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. It has my email address and phone number and so on. Yeah, just feel free to reach out directly on LinkedIn and I'll respond.
All right, we'll do that. And we're just under 15 minutes, so we're going to wrap it up.
Sounds good. Thank you, man.
Thanks
very much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Leader Leverage Podcast. If you'd like to connect or learn more, you can find me on LinkedIn at Andrew Kappel, or you can check out and subscribe at leaderlev.com. That's www.leaderlev.com.